All right, first up today, two men, two very different backgrounds. One was a white supremacist. He was the founding member of what became the largest racist skinhead organization in the world. Our other guest is a former Milwaukee police officer, and his father was gunned down in a hate crime at the Sikh temple 5 years ago in Milwaukee.
Both men are now part of a group committed to compassion and diversity. Arno, Michaelis, and Pardeep, Kaleka met in the wake of the tragedy, and now they speak together publicly about kindness and tolerance.
Yeah,
so great to have you here together.
Good morning.
Yeah,
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
You guys are a very unlikely pair.
Yeah, an odd couple at first.
It's a bromance for the ages, actually.
I like that.
I mean, getting an introduction like that, looking back on your past and your history as somebody who's been a white supremacist, part of this large skinhead group, a co-founder of it nonetheless, singing in a hate crime or a hate band, I should say. How, when you look back at all those titles in your life, do you feel about those things?
I feel a lot of urgency to try to make the world a better place. I have a lot of karma to process, and while I definitely regret all the harm that I've done, and I'll never forget about that, it's important to me to try to transform that harm into motivation to lessen more harm like that happening. So everything that I do and everything that Pardeep and I do is really to get human beings to see each other as fellow human beings and see what we have in common and really address the root causes behind hate and violence.
Is part of your journey forgiving yourself for the decisions you made and the hate that you truly felt, right? Because you used to hate people just because of their skin color.
I've learned so much about forgiveness during this process, and much of that has been taught to me by this man. But the self-forgiveness is absolutely as important as anything else. If I'm not forgiving myself, what business do I have being up on stage or working in a classroom talking to young people about it? So for me, that's part of the process. And of course, it doesn't mean that anything I did is okay. It doesn't mean it's acceptable, but it does mean that I can now fully dedicate myself to helping other people, which I can't do if I'm beating myself up.
Yeah.
What changed you? What was it?
The quick answer was exhaustion. It's exhausting to hate people, it's exhausting to hurt people, it's exhausting to cut yourself off from the rest of society. And what was most exhausting was when people who I was trying to hate treated me with kindness. So there were times when a Jewish boss, a lesbian supervisor, Black and Latino coworkers treated me with kindness when I least deserved it, and it's really set an example of how human beings should treat each other. And those experiences indicated to me how wrong I was, and that built up until a point where I was literally looking for an excuse to leave, which came in kind of a two-stage thing. I became a single parent, and a couple months later, a second friend of mine was murdered in a street fight. So because of all these things coming together, along with the fact that my parents never gave up on me, it finally hit me in 1994 that I could do something better with my life, and there's a better way to think and a better way to live.
Yeah. Was it hard to trust at first? Because I think for you, I would think to sit next to someone and to interact with someone who's built a life, and not only have that philosophy, but practice hate and actively, do things against people. Was it hard to trust?
Yeah, I mean, I think trust is a gradual process that gets built up over time, and just like the same urgency that Arnold was talking about that he had, we also had as a community. We, for us as a community, as that day even transpired.
You're talking about the killings at the Sikh temple?
Yeah.
August. 5 years ago. August.
5 years ago, August 5th, 2012. But even as that day transpired, what we started to see was that the broader community really just came together. Just even that day, the day of, within hours of the incident happening, congregations were getting out of their own worships and came there and really just communally healed that day of, and it hasn't stopped since. So with that sense of urgency, I reached out to Arnold.
You reached out to him.
I did, yes. I reached out to him to understand, just like we're understanding the why does this happen, so that we can do the what about it. And as I reached out to him, that was really my inspiration. But then as time went by, that became a little bit less important, and our friendship became more important, and trust grew over time.
I'm interested to hear from your perspective. You know, Arno kept saying how he kept finding he was having these moments of kindness brought to him. And I'm wondering for you, your process of forgiveness, because I think as someone who's experienced a hate crime towards your father, you were a Milwaukee police officer, you've taught in the inner city, I can imagine, have felt repeatedly unkindness towards being a different race, towards your family members, friends. How do you feel about always maybe giving forgiveness in a society that's not always as kind to you?
Yeah, and I think forgiveness for me is so dynamic, and people are so dynamic. So it looks different in different circumstances. And it definitely, for us, it looked, as a community, it looked different. It looked, forgiveness in this sense, looked like vengeance. Because this person came in, isolated, suffering, you know, believing that white supremacy or white superiority was the way of life. So really trying to create that, and trying to create isolation within a marginalized community that was new to America. So with that said, our vengeance looked like, okay, you know what, because you tried to do this, this is the response. And we have been, I mean, we're continuously been inspired by youth, you know, youth from the Ulster Project, youth that we work with in Milwaukee, youth throughout the nation. We've probably talked to maybe 20 to 30,000 youth, kids, communities, and all because somebody came into a temple one Sunday morning and thought that they could isolate a community.
I wonder too, because Arno, it seemed like you were ready to change, and I wonder with groups that you talk to, and you reach people, and people listen, and you can hear it in your heart. But for someone who's in the process of hating, can you change people by talking to them if they're active haters?
Yeah, I mean, personally, I think change is the only truth and constant that there is. If you, I mean, I want, and I think Arnold also wants the same thing, is like after you meet us, after we talk to you, after we come to your town, we want you to walk away a little bit different than you walked in. We have been blessed to be able, I mean, last town that we were in was Groton, Massachusetts, and they had this just tension that was happening in that town because of the changing demographic.
Yeah.
2 Munders were coming into the town, and they had community which wanted to be all inclusive. They had other community that wanted to preserve. So now you have these two communities kind of going at each other, and like, both of you are, okay, that's fine, we hear both of you, but now what's the solution? And I think that's sometimes what we get away from, is that we become such a problem-centered society that we get away from the solutions.
Yeah. Well, it's such a time of high tension in a lot of cities and racially driven tension that I think it's important for people to hear your message. You guys have this great walk that's coming up. It's Saturday, August 5th at 8:30. It's on the anniversary, the 5th anniversary. It's a memorial walk for the Sikh temple as well. And so this is at the Oak Creek High School. You can learn more about these guys and all the great work that you do at servetounite.org. Will you go out to schools and speak, or groups and speak?
Oh yeah, yeah.
So people can find you there at that website. You've got your full stories there along with a lot of great information. So we urge people to head on out to that website and look more.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And good for both of you for setting such a great example. It's wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for being here.
Really appreciate it.